I've created something I did not mean to create. 7 months ago, when I started taking AI seriously, nothing was really organized. It did stuff for me, sure, but today it's a machine I couldn't have even fathomed at that time. It reads, writes, schedules its own work, it fixes itself when it breaks, and most of it does completely on its own. A lot of it literally while I'm asleep. Mark Andreessen, the venture capitalist, was on Joe Rogan a while ago talking about a term they're using in Silicon Valley that he called the AI vampire. The person who realizes that the opportunity cost of this moment is just far too high to spend sleeping. And that's me. A portrait right next to the definition. So in this video, I'm going to show you my entire machine, what it actually does, what I had to kill along the way, and exactly how you can build your own. Okay, so 7 months ago, back in January of this year, 2026, I opened Claude Code for the first time. And in that 7-month period, I've burned through basically every possible way that there is to organize an AI's brain. Basic memory stores, Claude MD docs, the basics. Then over time, I moved everything over into GBrain after using the GStack skill set for a while made by Gary Tan. And it's a great system. It really is, actually. But if you look at how it's built, it's a CEO, it's an engineer, it's a QA person. So it's built for a software team, and it's built for people who live in pure code. And that's not my life. I'm consulting, I'm doing real estate, I'm creating websites, I'm chasing business ideas. All the funny kind of unique stuff that I do, I didn't need a system that really excelled at code. I needed a system that understood particulars, instructions, details, context of what I do every day. So then 3 weeks ago, I watched a YouTube video by Wes Roth, and he was talking about an idea from Andrej Karpathy that your notes when working with agentic systems are not for you, they are for the agent. Basically, everything should live in plain text files on your local computer with the AI acting as a librarian. It files everything, it links everything, and it keeps everything current. Now, I know people like Theo Brown, who is one of my favorite AI YouTubers. He really hates this so much, but I do use Obsidian. And if you look back at the beginning of this video, that visualization that you saw, that's actually my Obsidian graph. So I watched that video and it kind of clicked with me, and I said, that's how I should run my brain. And now the best thing is I can prove what happens next, because this machine keeps receipts of absolutely everything. This is the actual migration in the system's own history. Look at the dates. Every single entry, July 14th. I totally tore out the old system and replaced it in a day. Now, if you started this from scratch, it's actually pretty easy. What you really need is 3 folders and a rules file. Mine didn't start simple because I had dragged 7 months of accumulated brain information into it. But here's the thing. Everything is interconnected. Every little action understands everything else that's going on in its world. People love to talk about hallucinations. You see it all over the internet, but I don't have hallucinations anymore. I have semantic or technical problems sometimes, and I have to maintain it. But what I absolutely do not have is agents that don't know what they're doing. There is a trap here though, and I like to think of it kind of like Inception. Your work ends up kind of becoming your work. So what I mean by that is I catch myself working on the system that does my work, which technically is my work. I really don't know if that makes sense, but I'll come back to it and explain a little bit later. For now, let me show you how the machine works. So this is the vault today, 1,355 pages. Every dot equals 1 page, and every line is a connection between 2 things that the brain knows. And every line is a connection between two things that the machine knows. But this is the boring part. This is just a visualization. The interesting thing is what runs on top of all of this. Right now, as we speak, there are about 34 scheduled tasks running on my Mac between launched jobs and Codex scheduled tasks. And from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day, these things are running completely on their own, waking up agents to do their work. I have one that writes and publishes articles to one of my websites twice a week that I completely don't touch. It writes it publishes, and then it goes and tells the search engines what it did autonomously. Then there's one that runs some of my video content pipeline. So it'll draft an entire show and then stop for me to review it. Because for that particular workflow, there needs to be a hard review gate before I just send it out into the world. Then there's another one that tracks every single business relationship that I have. And every hour in that working window, it's checking, does anybody need a follow-up? Here's one of my most recent, but maybe my best one, is at 8 o'clock every night, one job goes back and reads what every job did that day and drops a report in my inbox. So now I've got the machine reviewing the machine. It's not perfect. When something breaks, there's a process that catches it. Previous to this, I was getting myself caught up in fixing things throughout the day and stopping the work. And because it comes at the end of the day, I'm able to continue my workflow throughout the day and kind of just deal with it at night now, which is just more efficient. And then this is the important part. Everything keeps getting better because as everything works, everything gets written down. As things get written down, the agents learn from that and the processes harden. This system is extremely receipt heavy. So now at the end of every night, or if I decide to look at it in the morning, I get to see what my machine did when I wasn't watching. So this is a log from yesterday. While I was in this room setting up the lights to shoot this video, it was publishing, checking, filing, following up for me. And to me, this is all really honestly crazy because in January, I couldn't have even imagined anyone ever working this way. And this isn't like a large company. There isn't a bunch of people around me working and helping with any of this stuff. It's just me, a reasonably highly performing Mac, and a big old folder of text files. When I was checking for how many automations I've had overall in my system, so at last count, I've had about 60 automations living in my system. My directory keeps records of every single one of them, even the dead ones. And that's what we need to talk about next. Because before you think like I'm just sitting here talking about how amazing my system is, a lot of, or maybe even most of what I've built in the last 7 months is now dead. I killed a lot of it. And the first thing that I ever killed is honestly the one that I'm the most proud of. So this was attempt 1. The orchestrator, right? So if you spent more than 10 minutes on X in the last few months, you've seen systems like this. And apologies to those of you watching who, obviously know about these systems, but not everybody does. But I'm talking about things like OpenClaw and Hermes Agent. Basically, these are downloadable autonomous agents, supposedly self-improving with dozens of built-in tools, communicates via Telegram or Slack, and you're supposed to treat it like a little employee or personal assistant. And the pitch is really strong. It sounds great on the surface. You install one thing that orchestrates everything else that you're doing and everything's good. The promise is that you basically install one brain to run everything else, and that sounded good to me. So I did it. I ran Hermes Agent as the operator of my entire system. It routed the jobs, managed workers, sent me updates, and, it was genuinely impressive. But using it felt to me a bit like busy work. Every job that I had previously that used to just run on its own now had the Hermes aspect to it. And the problem is that when Hermes broke, everything around it would break as well. So here's the timeline, and I've got the receipts for this. I was running Hermes back in early spring, so maybe late March, early April. And even then, the first time, I was finding myself replacing Hermes jobs with standard direct path jobs. So that ended up fizzling out the first time around. But here's the embarrassing part is that after I had started creating my own system and things were working, I decided, hey, this time around, maybe Hermes will work. Maybe I can fit it into this brain and system that I've created. So maybe 2 months ago, I made the decision, all right, Hermes is going to run this whole thing. I started working on implementing it, and within 24 hours, I had totally reversed the decision. I said, nope, we're not doing it. I killed it, launched it straight out of my system, deleted everything. And this time, I wrote it into my doctrine so that the next time, I can't talk myself so easily into trying it again. And I know there's going to be people who tell me, you weren't using it right. And that's fine. But for the way that I work, and I think for the way that a lot of other people work, it just isn't the right mechanism. And because my machine keeps receipts, here's the decision dated in my own doctrine. I literally keep a checksummed archive of my own dead orchestrator. So lesson 1, you don't need a boss agent. Not one you build, not one you install, and not the next hype one that's on GitHub. You need to be the orchestrator. Simple, direct jobs. The schedule runs the tasks. All right, my second graveyard, or I guess my second grave in the graveyard, the outreach autopilot. So I automated follow-up emails. The machine could send personalized emails all day long, completely on its own. You know what happened? Nothing. 0 replies. None. Because automation is an amplifier. If you automate something that works, you get more of what works. Automate something unproven and you get silence. At scale, faster, and while paying for the privilege. Killed it July 27th. And the system card I have for it is honest to the point of being brutal. We got no replies, we burned a bunch of tokens, and it was retired on owner decision. So that lesson is to prove it by hand before you go building the automation. And then grave 3, you've already kind of heard about this one, all the different frameworks. So that's the G-Stack, G-Brain, the skill packets, the personas. All of those things aren't necessarily bad. It's just that none of it was built for my kind of work. But when I ripped out all of that extra noise on July 14th, I learned that it was something bigger than just the wrong fit. Every session had to start off by reading all of this stuff. A big set of contradicting instructions and tons of extra steps because these frameworks demanded it. What you have to understand is the models are already smart. Any kind of scaffolding that you set up is really for you. For your agents, you need to give it knowledge and rules, and that's it. And so the pattern across all 3 of these were complexity. It really feels like you're doing something when you're building it. And that's a trap that I think a lot of people fall into. That graveyard is what taught me the actual rules of running this machine. And there's only 4. So after all that, what's left is the stuff that actually works. And I want to emphasize this before I go and list them. None of these came from a video or somebody else's framework. Every single one of them came from something breaking. So rule 1 is that everything lives in plain files that I own, not in some app and not in AI's chat memory. You're going to get a lot of people out there online who are telling you, they've got the answer to the context problem. Don't listen to them. What you need is actual files on your computer that any person or agent can read. An AI's memory of a conversation isn't reliable and it isn't portable. These files are the truth, and the agents read and write to them. That's the whole relationship. Rule 2 is that no job is done because an AI says it's done. Oftentimes an agent will tell you everything went great. Something separate has to go in and look at the live website or the calendar or whatever it is the session was working on. That's most of why my system is as receipt heavy as it is. Rule 3 is 1 writer per job. Exactly 1 process is allowed to write to a given website. Exactly 1 owns follow-ups, which means that when something goes wrong, there's only 1 place to look. And when something publishes, I know exactly who did it. And the 4th rule is that I approve anything that is, expensive. Anything public, anything that goes to a real person, or anything that costs actual money, I have to approve. The machine can draft it, stage it, get it completely ready to go out, but then it stops. You saw this earlier with the video pipeline. The show sits there finished until I say go. And notice as well that none of these rules say anything about which model to use. Everybody wants to argue about models. I've swapped models numerous times since January, and my opinion changes every day on which one I like more. And with this system, the beauty is it doesn't matter if I want to change it or if I want to keep it. It all works because it's mine. All right, so that's enough of me explaining everything. Let me just show you something live. So this is Claude Code sitting in a new session with my brain file open. Notice that I haven't given it any context. I haven't given it a elaborate prompt or anything to go off of in this brand new session, just the brain file where all of my systems run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to produce something for me here. Can you tell me over the last 2 weeks which articles and videos you have posted to richardsonappliedai.com and holdengr.com? I want to know how many of them you've sent to Index Now, so Google Search Console, and I want to make sure that you got receipts from Google Search Console that the submissions were accepted. So it says, I'll dig into the vault and the site pipelines to reconstruct what was published in the last 2 weeks and whether indexing submissions were recorded. Let me start by searching for the relevant records. So what it's doing is being auto-directed by the ClaudeMD file that I have on file that is also symlinked over into my agents.md file on Codex. They're the same file, but for the two different providers. And it's the initial directory that puts them further down into the rabbit hole they need to go down into to find out this information, but they always have a place to go. Okay, so here's what it said. I pulled this together from the Vault routines, both site repos, the RAI discoverability ledger, and the live GitHub action logs. Here's the full picture. So what that's saying is basically it went directly into the vault, the brain, the system, whatever you want to call it. It calls it many different things, but ultimately it's referring to the same system. The RAI discoverability ledger, which is one of the systems that we run, and the live GitHub action logs, which is another thing that we track. So it knew automatically to go and search in those places without me saying to go look there what articles I was talking about or anything like that. It just knew. And obviously you can see here what it did once it got there. It found all of the episodes that we put out on Richardson Applied AI and then on holdengr.com, 26 video watch pages with the buying and selling series. And then these are all the Richardson Applied AI videos that were created. Note that all of these were generated with an 11 Labs voice and basically like infographics that Claude generates. So they're totally made 6-7 minute videos that I don't have to do anything on. And it said that Index Now is 100% submitted. So that's something that I taught it in both of these website submitters to do. And it happens to be that all of the pages did happen to get submitted. So it is very consistent. So that just shows you how, even with a very complex system, I can get a very clear answer. And you can see that things are running very consistently and reliably because of the way that everything is set up. So it went and read its files, pulled the answer, and cited where everything came from. I didn't have to paste in any context. I didn't have to re-explain my business. I didn't have to prompt engineer anything. It already knows because it's been accumulating all of this. So if you've watched this far, you're probably wondering how you would actually start doing this yourself. And my advice would be to not start where I am, but start where I started, because the first version of this takes maybe an hour. You install Obsidian, you get Claude Code, you create a couple files, and you make 3 folders. One is an inbox where new stuff lands. One's for raw materials, so things you save and never look at again. And then one is the wiki, which is the part the AI or your agents are maintaining. And then you, in conjunction with whatever agent you're using, write the rules file, and you're basically ready to go. Then go feed it things you care about. Articles, meeting notes, client stuff, ideas, whatever your version of what's important is. And then start asking it questions. Then you're going to want to go use it by hand for a week or two. But then after some time, you're going to realize you've been asking it to do the same thing over and over, maybe 3 or 4 times. And that's the indication of where you should put your first automation. One scheduled job that writes down what it did and records it. It's not an orchestrator, it's not a framework, it's a job with a receipt. I went back and looked, and my first job was actually a nightly job back in April that actually just tracked my own Claude usage and posted it into a chat on Slack. It was completely unnecessary. I thought I was going to start some kind of SaaS that people would track all of their Codex and Claude code usage and compete against each other. I don't know. But it was the right first job, right? First morning that you read a receipt from a job that was done the night before, you'll start to realize how I've kind of gotten 7 months deep into this. So before I end here, I kind of owe you an explanation to the inception thing from earlier, where your work becomes your work, because I do spend real time maintaining this machine here. But while I'm doing that, the machine is running my business. The articles publish, the follow-ups go out, and the final report ends up in my inbox at 8:30. So the honest math is, I traded doing the chores for maintaining the thing that does the chores. And honestly, that trade does get better every month because the models keep getting better. And my rules really don't have to change. That altogether is what I couldn't have fathomed back in January. And if you're a business owner who wants to do something like this without the 7 months of headache, that is exactly what I do now. Richardson Applied AI, links below. I'm going to keep documenting this machine right here. What breaks, what gets built, and what dies next. So subscribe if you want to watch it happen. And if you're starting yours this weekend, leave a comment and tell me what your first scheduled job is going to look like. I'd actually like to know.